Welcome to Growth Architects, a podcast for tech entrepreneurs, product innovators, and marketing strategists. Whether you're searching for product market fit, exploring new growth channels, or trying to avoid common startup pitfall, this is where you'll find proven strategies to fuel your success. And now, let's get started. Hello, everybody, and welcome to a new episode of Growth Architects. My guest today is Robert Black. Robert is the author of Next Level Self, a book where he helps fellow entrepreneurs get back in control of their time. Robert is also an experienced marketer and a podcast host. With him today, we're going to discuss everything about efficiency, making systems that work for you, and how to make sure that you have meaningful conversations. Robert, I'm very happy to have you here.
Happy to be here. We'll have a party.
Yeah, absolutely. And well, we were saying before how beautiful is the fact that we're wearing very different colors today. All white for me here, all black for you there. It's like we planned, but trust me, we didn't.
It worked out, but we went with it, right? We rolled with the punches.
Yeah, well, I guess white really represents me. I don't know if that's the same with you and black. Do you have that association as well?
I don't think about it. I figure, I like to just be kind of simple and plain. And sometimes you go on a podcast and someone has like a bookshelf and they have all these things hanging behind them. And I used to do that, but I was like, I'd rather just have a clean slate. And then if I have something to say or express, I can just do it on the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And a lot of people are probably not listening to it since they listen on Spotify. But Robert, would you like to present to yourself to the ones that don't know you?
Of course. So what there is to know about me is I like to get stuff done, right? I'm a former computer programmer and I used to make all kinds of software, and that led to making websites. And now, such as you are, I have a lot of fun with podcasting. You have quality conversations, you create content, you have this thing called omnipresence, you get the networking in, you turn them into referrals and clients. It's a really great way to grow your business, to get the message out there, make friends, as long as you can rise above the negativity, as long as you can figure out a way to combat the social anxiety that many people let win, right? A lot of people, they let the doubt, the defeat, the procrastination win. And so I have this podcast called Marketer of the Day, where we've interviewed 1,400 business owners and entrepreneurs about their various secrets, similar to how you have your Growth Architect show. And then the latest hot off the press news is we recently put out a compilation book called Next Level Self with 10 of the best interviews out of those 1,400, just sharing people's secrets, breakthroughs, ahas, similarities, differences. And so it's a lot of fun, right? This entrepreneurship podcasting thing, it's quite a lifestyle.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so really the bulk of your work is really understanding entrepreneurs, right? You talk to thousands of them literally on your podcast. Also, the idea of your book came from having talked and also having helped many of them. Where did it all start?
It started with, I came alive when it came to like computers and programming, and we've all been there, right? We've all had that hobby or that activity where we could just do it all day, every day. We could stay up 3 days straight playing around with it. But then I didn't really connect with friends that got really big into video games. Like, when they got into like things like Counter-Strike or like strategy games, I was just like, after a few minutes of playing a video game, like it wasn't that fun for me. But then building things was, right? Because you play a video game and you die in the game or you get the high score, and what did it really amount to? And then you go and start all over again. But then if you create a book or an app or a piece of software or something that you get it kind of working a little bit and then you get the bugs out and it works really solidly, then that's something that you've created and then other people can create. So early on, I made things like a pop-up plugin. So you had a web page and then you needed an ability to have something pop up and someone enters their name and email address and they can enter that and use it to build a list. You create something useful, right? It's not just goofing around. It actually is something that can grow a business, that can make money. But then I found that I thought, okay, what's this going to turn into? And then I looked into like the possible career paths, and it looked like the path to success there was I'd have to move to the big city, right? I have to move to Silicon Valley, which is like 2 hours from where I'm at, and commute an hour to work and ride in a train and live in a tiny apartment and work in a cubicle just for the upside of maybe someday quitting all that and becoming like a mid-level manager and just telling other people how to program. So I thought it's like imagine if you like were good at playing the guitar and they said, okay, like it's your favorite thing to do. And imagine if you played a guitar and then you could just tell other people to play guitar. It's like, but I still wanted to do the nitty gritty fun stuff. And then, and we all know even 20 years later here that when you get a 9-to-5 job, it's like riskier than starting a business, right? Because you could just instantly get fired one day. You have a bad day, things change. And so it was a lot more interesting and fun and safe in a way to build a business, to grow something. And that led to, but then I had to get the word out. And that led to building websites, building a list, marketing products, doing webinars, doing podcasts, and just stepping up and figuring out all these things that we all now do to get the publicity, get the word out. You can't hide behind the computer screen. And so there was just like obstacle after obstacle where I said, well, hey, there's the easy way, or there's the way of playing it safe, but that's also a path to not really making money and not doing something that sustains you and what you do, and kind of becomes the secondary priority of the hobby. And I was like, this programming and this building a business and working with websites and stuff, I want that to be the forefront. And so the way to make that happen is to rise above the comfort zone and to talk to people, talk to strangers, get on LinkedIn, get on podcasting. And that's what's led from just kind of like a shy computer geek to now like business owner, entrepreneur, podcaster.
Yeah, beautiful. So it sounds like you really had the evolution of, as you said, a computer geek, a nerdy guy who really liked anything related to technology, like building pop-ups and stuff, but didn't want to move to Silicon Valley. And so you try to make a life that worked for you where you are on your own terms, right? And that's also
100%.
what you're teaching other entrepreneurs to do. I think that's the beauty of it. In a way, I think it's a very beautiful story because I really empathize with the idea that not everyone should, move to big places to have the life they want, the life they dream of, but also the life that really allows them to use their talents the best way. And I know that your book is really about that. So how to use your talent the best way, and also how to make it so that, everything around you, kind of everything revolves around that. Would you now like to tell us a little bit more about the book that you wrote, for whom it is, what would readers get out of it?
Yeah, so this book is what's called a compilation or an anthology book. And so it's, if you've ever heard of like Chicken Soup for the Soul, what that is every chapter is written by a different person. And so we have people like William Hung from American Idol and John Lee Dumas from Entrepreneurs on Fire. And they all kind of have their own different areas of expertise. And there's all these lessons in there because I find that, I don't know about you, Mr. Federico, but like, I need a steady supply of the positivity and the insights, right? And some of the things I've heard before, some of the things are new, but I need that steady flow, right? That's why we listen to podcasts such as yours or YouTube. We need just people saying some new things and some repeat things just to kind of keep us on that track. And so the lessons of this book are some of these ideas about, a lot of it is about being kind to yourself and of saying, well, you don't need to be perfect. You just need to be authentic. Or as far as what you're putting out there, it's better to be consistent than to be complex. And so you put out these podcast episodes and you evolve, you grow over time. And we've all been there where we've all said, like, I've got to get everything perfect, right? Make the website perfect colors, perfect lining up. But then life is short. We need to get things done. And so it's more important to be consistent and to have something that's solid and something that's reliable and have a system. And we just have all kinds of different ideas like that. And another one that's huge is leadership, right? And even up until a few years ago, I feel like ideas like leadership seems sort of corny and really like keyword based, where people would like draw diagrams and say, here's a triangle here and here's a circle here. And this is what leadership is. And I'm like, what? It's just some abstract concept. But then a lot of us entrepreneurs figured out there's ideas like emotional intelligence and emotional control. And when you build this business and you get customers and clients and leads, you end up doing all this stuff yourself and you become the bottleneck. So you have to hire a team and you need to hand over some of that control and figure out patience and figure out project management. And so there's a lot of these stories about people that they've been on all these adventures, but then if you try to just like read like a start to finish step-by-step book, it can get kind of boring and dry. But if you jump into different people's adventures that are similar but different from yours, I find that it's a lot more interesting that way. And it scratches the itch as far as you get your knowledge, your learning snuck in, but you also get some entertainment because you hear about these people who have taken these risks and figured it out.
Okay, nice. So your book is actually pills, lessons that every entrepreneur can use to kind of reshape, redefine their life, right? Do you know how many kind of pills or lessons do you have on your book?
How many? Well, there's 10 chapters,
10
so you
chapters.
could say
Okay.
that there's 10 lessons, but I'm
Yeah.
sure there's little sub lessons hidden within that.
Yeah. So what I would like to bring it back is what you said about authenticity. I think that's especially a very important one. So I've often met, also in my previous experience, for example, with my business partner, there's a lot of entrepreneurs that have the idea that if you're building, let's say, company X, which resembles other companies in the industry, say, for example, if you're building a SaaS company, then there is only one way to build it, one way to market it, one way to spend your time, one way to approach investors. I always had the opposite opinion on this. I think you're more successful if you start from who you are. Probably it will not be, let's say, the best strategy according to the book, but if you're true to yourself, people just can smell it that you do it better. Second of all, you can do it for the long term. Do you kind of have the same point of view on this? And kind of what's your take on this part?
I first thought about this idea you're discussing when I was on Facebook once, and I was just scrolling through, and I had some friend that was running an event, a conference, and I kind of stopped scrolling, and I saw these people standing around this conference, and something just didn't quite look right, and I couldn't really put my finger on it, and we've all seen pictures of like people at hotels, conferences, standing around, people are having fun, and this one, it's just everyone seemed miserable, but like pretending they weren't. It was the weirdest thing, and it stopped me on my tracks. Like something was really odd, and I think that ever since then, when this idea of authenticity comes up, I think about that. This idea that, well, what's true and what's a lie, right? And lying is when you're thinking A and you're saying B, but then it's like you have to hold two different things in your head, and that's why lying doesn't really work out as easily as telling the truth. And so but we all have to kind of like push ourselves and discover that inner self too, don't we? And so we all have to say, well, here's who I am today. And maybe I am a little nervous. Maybe I am a little uncertain. Maybe I don't have it all figured out, but there's the person that I want to become. And that in itself, that is not lying, but the lying comes when you deliberately know that you're not a thing, and you try to pass off something else, or you take like an inauthentic action anyway. And so I think that it's tricky to think about that, right? That there's the person that we want to become, that we're evolving into, and there is the small obstacles, right? There's the imposter syndrome, but then there's, as far as like being authentic, like being an entrepreneur takes some kind of soul searching, right? And like doing all these podcasts, like that was a big aha that came out again and again, this idea that your business is an expression of you, right? And if you're the kind of person that if you're lazy, if you're inconsistent, if your business is disorganized versus if it is organized, or if it's something that you kind of dread, or you just do it because you just want to look good, like you can't hide that forever. And I think that I have a lot of respect for anyone that has a business, and especially anyone that's still in the game, because you see a lot of that, right? Sometimes people, they build a business and they come up with reasons to quit and excuses, and they drop out. And so, yeah, I definitely think that there's a lot of introspection that happens, and there's so many paths to success, but you do have to choose a path to success, and you have to do with the failure and the adversity, and what you end up building, it never is what you imagined, right? And you have to be willing to sometimes accept the reality of, if you build that SaaS and you spend all this time and you have to pivot, right? Or it just fails no matter what you do, or people aren't looking for this feature, or you have to do more prospecting than you expect. But it's all on this journey of discovering the authenticity and just figuring out who the real you is.
Nice. Yeah, absolutely. And it seems like you're taking it from the point of view of like the why. So why do you start thing? And I totally agree with that. I was also referring to kind of like the more tactical part, like for example, the channels you use. To give an example, well, I'm really not good at, being every day on social media, Instagram. One of the people that I helped throughout these years is an entrepreneur who built a very solid personal brand by being every day on Instagram, LinkedIn, with very personal and relatable content. I love that. I often wish I was her. I tried as well, but yeah, you can smell it. I'm not good at that. I think that it would be an awesome path to success if it was a bit in my, if I were good at that. But then I'm like, well, let's probably pick something where I'm better at, which is able to deliver results for me. So I really think what you are saying also boils down to the most tactical part: channel selection, marketing, and so on. And let me ask you now something about marketing, because then obviously as a book writer, there's a part of like creation, which is more the product side, but there's also the whole part of distribution and so on. So just out of curiosity, how's the life after you publish your book? Like, what are things that you do to make sure that the word comes to as many people as possible?
Well, I think that you need to decide on what you'll do every week, because I think like the subtext of what you're saying is so right, that people, they spend all this time, spend months, years making a book, and then they publish it and they think that's the finish line. They think, cool, the book's on Amazon. Amazon will just send me free traffic, right? They always show those banners that say the Kindle fund is $63 million this month. I'll just get a little piece of that. And you look at most books and you scroll down to the category ranking, and it's like they're ranked like a million, right? They're ranked like way down in like 100,000. And I look at that and I say, okay, well, they've sold 10 copies, they've sold 50 copies, which is great, right? It's more than zero, but there are things that you can and should do to get the word out, and you need to figure out what to do recurringly, right? And I think that what you said there, as far as like you figure out what your traffic source is and what your fits your personality, and and you have to post somewhere, right? Because like a lot of these people that teach traffic, they say like, here's 17 platforms, right? Post on Instagram, post on LinkedIn, post on Facebook. And it's like, but I'd spend all day just making one post on each thing and then wouldn't have any time left. So you figure out like these one or two areas where you really shine. Instagram, I can't even figure it out, but LinkedIn, I have so much fun there. And what's good about with like podcasting and repurposing, that you can kind of cut it up and put it different places. So I think that whenever someone asks me that question, like, okay, I've got a book, how do I get it sold more? My default answer is guests on podcasts. And that's what I'm doing right now, right here. I'm guesting on the Growth Architect podcast to sell copies of my book, Next Level Self. And so you get on podcasts, and it is awkward. And I admit, like, I'm increasing the number of podcasts that I'm on, but you get on other people's podcasts, you create the content, and you also tap into their network and their audience. But then you have to follow up, right? Because another thing I've noticed from having all these podcast guests is, I would say like 80% of them, I never hear from them again. And then if someone says, I went on podcast to promote my book, it didn't work, I go on YouTube, I search their name, and I find like some episode they were on, and there's 0 YouTube comments. And I'm thinking like, and there's 0 likes. I'm like, but you were the guest. Couldn't you click the like button on your own video? And couldn't you leave a quick comment on your own video? And there's always more to do, right? Like I'm sure there's a bunch of YouTube videos where I'm on and I didn't leave a comment, but then so there's kind of like that. What do you do every week? And then there's also like low hanging fruit, because what really blows my mind here, Federico, is how a lot of people just don't know the basics, which like we can't know the basics of every single facet, but just the simple idea that you put out a book on Amazon and every 90 days they will make your book free for 5 days. And it's just like, you go into Amazon, you click this one button, and it's just like, I thought everyone knew this. Just like a year ago, I thought everyone knew what ChatGPT was. And I was like, hey, there's this device or this app, you can just answer anything and they will give you an answer. But like, yeah, there's this, when you put out a book on Amazon, every 90 days, it can be for free for 5 days. And then just
I
that
didn't
alone
know
will
that
get,
either.
see that, there we go. And here I am like, and you have to be careful too, because I have to be like, hey, this thing, it's important and you can do it. But then I don't want to be like, well, hey, no one knows about this. And if someone has known about it, then they feel like, oh, he's teaching too much beginner stuff. But yeah, and like so few people take advantage of this, and they do make it where like you have to go in and actually click the button. You can't just like schedule it ahead of time. Like if you use the 90-day window, you have to like go back 91 days later and like click the button again. But during those 5 days, the book is free, and then it will show up differently. Like it'll get ranked somewhere else. But then a lot of people, they just stop there again, right? They say, oh, cool, free days, I'm done. And it's like, no.
I think
During
that's a
those
very
5,
interesting one. Please allow me to kind of expand on this, because I think it'll be interesting for everyone who's like considering writing books for like thought leadership as well. So, what's the advantage of having your book for free every 90 days?
So the advantage is that you get new people that you wouldn't otherwise get. Even if your book's 99 cents, it's just there's some people like they won't bother, or they're not warmed up to you enough. They don't know you, or they're just browsing Amazon. And then it'll still increase your ranking, and then they can still leave like a verified review under your book. And then what you do is you combine the free days with your existing marketing efforts. So use that as an excuse to email your list and tell them, hey, this is timely, this is urgent, it's only free during this time. And it's so bizarre because some people just won't spend $1 or $2 on your book, and that's okay, because like there's the different tiers of your traffic of your list, right? You have people that they buy from you, and some people that they'll never buy from you, but they're your amplifiers. You look at like Gary Vaynerchuk on social media. His price point's like 200 grand, right? If you want to work with Gary Vaynerchuk, you have to be like Coca-Cola, but he still makes all these posts, and then people do like and they comment, and they'll never buy from him. They're not his people. They're not even in its price point, but there's these people that you can have as in your orbit that will help you further get the word out. So you make your book for free for those 5 days. You promote the heck out of it on social media and your list, and you say, hey, it's free, buy it, read it, and leave a comment. And Amazon, they'll still give you like a few little pennies for the purchase. And then the more pages somebody ends up reading, they'll give you like a few more pennies for doing that. So you still like it's sort of like a sale in a way, but it's just like one of these many things that you can do as far as getting the word out. But there's so much weird stuff you can do, right? You can post on Facebook groups that are specifically for like book readers. You can prospect on LinkedIn. But yeah, those two things is be on podcasts and use those free Kindle days. It's just so few people do it, and you put it in your calendar, make it recurring. It's a habit that'll definitely serve you.
Nice. But that's very interesting. Didn't know of that. And well, obviously, I am in digital marketing and web design. So how do you recommend your website supports your book launch once you're ready?
So, ideally what you'd want to do is make some blog posts, and that's what I'm currently working on right now. But at the very least, like what I have set up for most of my books at the very least is just a .com domain name, like a one-page website, right? Where someone can go and they can see what the book looks like. They can see a headline, they can see like a synopsis of the book, and they can click over to Amazon. And so what I like to do, and this is again something that it's very few book authors do, right? They put up a book, they come with all this great stuff, a cover, a name, and then they're on my podcast, and I'm like, hey, what's the name of your book? Well, it's Next Level Self. Great, how can I get it? They say, well, go to Amazon and search Next Level Self, and hopefully you'll find it. It's like, no, just register a .com name and put a one-page website on there. And something, again, another little gem here is that so many domain names are taken, right? Like growtharchitect.com, I'm sure is taken, but growtharchitectbook.com, it might not be. So many times you say, here's the name of my book, but the domain name's taken, someone else is using that. But you take the name of your book and you add book.com, and so many times it's available. So you make that one single web page that kind of matches your book's color scheme and says, here's what it is, click over to Amazon. And then I also create a redirect for anytime I have a book and it's that domain name /Amazon. So like Next Level Self, because nextlevelself.com was taken. There's nothing there, but someone got it years ago. But nextlevelselfbook.com is there. And then when I want to just drop the link, it's nextlevelselfbook.com /Amazon. And that just directs someone directly to the Amazon page. And so it saves a click, right? It makes it easy enough to have it accessible. And then you're hoping that it'll help you in the search results too, because again, sometimes people, they won't even go to Amazon, they'll search on Google. So they search the title of your book, and hopefully if there's your Amazon listing, that'll rank it highly, but also because you have that domain name and it has book in the name and they're looking for that book, hopefully that'll help you with those SEO rankings. So there's all sorts of stuff you could do, but yeah, just those two components, right? The name of your book and the word book.com with just a one page, and then /Amazon redirect just to send them right to Amazon.
Yeah, good. Very good. So this latches on to your primary activity. So as aside from being an author and podcast host, you also help companies that have a podcast to make sure that their podcast ranks high and grows with organic audience. Can you tell me a little bit more about what you do? What are the entrepreneurs or companies that you usually serve? And where do you see them struggle the most?
Ooh, that's a good one. That's a good question. That's meaty. There's some beef on that bones. The service is called DFY Podcast. It's done for you podcasting. And the idea is that if we're successful, we have content, right? We have stuff to say. We have those customer success stories. We have those things about our marketplace that really drives us crazy that needs to be discussed. But the problem is, like we mentioned earlier, there's all these things to do, right? There's all these traffic sources. And so my service, DFY Podcast, you join up, you send us the content like your Riverside recordings, like we're recording here, or your Zoom, or your phone, or you send your videos basically. And then we take that and we create the SEO titles, we create the show notes, we pull out the audio, we create the reels, the clips, the audiograms. And so we make it work for each platform, right? You say interesting things during your 20 or 30-minute podcast. We take that quote and put it in front of a picture of you. And that's the Instagram post, right? We take a 59-second video clip of what you said, and that's a TikTok post. And so if you are a thought leader, business owner, and you have content, which doesn't mean always written content. I like it when it's like a video, and especially when it's a two-person interview like this, we cut it up and we put it into those different platforms. So that way you have some consistency around there. And I think as far as where people struggle, get stuck with podcasting, well, the easy answer to that is they try to do it themselves. They try the context switching of saying, well, let me brainstorm some ideas, let me record some stuff, now let me edit some video, and you just end up switching thing to thing versus how much more fun would it be if it would just be like, hey, I'm sitting down with Federico, we're having a quality conversation. So that's definitely something where if you want to grow, if you want to be consistent, then you need to have someone to do kind of the grunt work, busy work with your podcast. But then I think the kind of a more real answer as far as where people are stuck and struggling with their podcast is for some reason, I see people that they don't network the way that you do, or the way that we're doing right here. They want to just record a show and it's just me and my content. And that might work for 50 or 100 episodes, but eventually, like, you need to have some friends on your show, and it'll be more interesting that way as well, I think, right? Because you can play off each other and get people from different walks of life, and it benefits you in all these different ways. But it's unfortunate how some people just, they, for some reason, they don't see the light and they think they can record all their content themselves, and then they miss a week, then they miss 2 weeks, and next thing you know, it's been 6 months since you did a podcast. Versus I've done my podcast for, I think it's been, well, I switched to the interview model 10 years ago, and I've done 1,400 episodes. And if it was 1,400 episodes of just me talking, there's no way I'd get there. But I have different people, different walks of life, and sometimes it's on the schedule, right? It's on the calendar. Sometimes I'm like, I'm not sure if I feel like showing up to this meeting, and I do anyway, and I have a blast. And I think that that's just, it's important to those two things is get someone else to do the production and then get an interview style, because that way you can get your vendors, your friends, your clients, your success stories. It's just a lot better for everyone to have two people playing off each other, I think.
Absolutely. I don't know about you, but after 50 episodes, I will probably run out of things to say. So is there any circumstance under which you would recommend a solo episode? Like, for example, as a way to kind of show your knowledge, or to kind of like position yourself better in a certain industry or niche. Because, for example, for me, I do a lot of these interviews, right? I sometimes trying to also have solo episodes. But one of the things that I noticed from some listeners to the show is like, okay, well, we feel that this way your knowledge doesn't really come across. And often the question at the end of an episode is more like, okay, but what is it that you exactly do? What service do you provide? So, what's your point of view on this?
I think you can have a mix. I think that's a great idea to sometimes, if you feel like you have all these episodes and it's the other person talking and you're like, oh, hey, I've got some good stuff to say. Like, of course, mix in the solo episodes, because something that I'm always on the lookout for is I'm trying not to steal my guest's thunder. And like, maybe you've thought about this too, but like you have a guest, like, right, they're the star of the show. And then, and you want to talk like 20-30% and let them do most of the talking. But sometimes it's tempting to like hijack the conversation, and they sell some story, and you be like, oh, that reminds me of some story of my own. And I'm keeping in mind like, okay, well, I might fit in a story, but I want to keep it way shorter than my guest story because there's that percentage, that ratio. And I don't know what's ideal, but it's like, I think if you don't have those solo episodes that sometimes let out the good stuff, you might be tempted to like cram in your own stories, and it's someone else's show. So I think that it's great to have a mix, and it's great to have that variety anyway, right? And like a lot of people, they are tuning in for your guests, but they're also tuning in for you, and they want to see like what you're up to, and I think it's great to keep your audience guessing in that way. So I say 100%, and especially if it gets more of that content out there, because there's never enough content to put out there. Of course, we want to always put out like good quality stuff, but it's like you don't want to be starved for content. And so I think that's a great idea. Sometimes if you have those special episodes with those special topics, like 100%, no one's saying do interview style only, but I think that jumping in, doing your own solo stuff, wonderful idea.
Yeah. And so the services that you guys offer are mainly about taking out the heavy burden of like editing the episode yourself, make sure it's a fit for every platform, make sure that the title is optimized. So all the operational around podcasting, which quite frankly is also what makes it less fun.
Yeah.
Is there any tip that you want to share with the audience in terms of like what does it help to grow your episode?
Follow up. A thing that's so needed. I have these 1,400 episodes. So I have, and some are solo episodes, but let's say to make the math simple, 1,400 episodes, there's about 1,200 guests over the years. And some of them were from 8-10 years ago, and some of them are gone, out of business, email bounces. So even to make the math even simpler, 1,000 people. And so those are 1,000 people where some of them, it's been many years, right? So some of them, they can come back on my show. Some of them, if I went through, and I do this about every quarter. You go through and you look at, well, have they reviewed and rated your show? Have they posted about their episode with you? Well, if not, make it easy for them. Say, hey, paste this on your LinkedIn. If the episode is on YouTube, go and look in the comment section, like we mentioned before, and like, is there one comment from them? Well, if not, have them go and do it. And at the very least, I've gone through that list a few times, again, once a quarter, just to see how they're doing. And sometimes we end up having a meeting called a post call, where we just kind of talk about who can we refer to each other and what has us excited. And that's led to some sales on both sides of it. But I think that goes back to, it's so few people either, I don't know, maybe they don't remember, or they don't know, or they don't have the time to follow up. And you get that time when you have a team doing all the dirty work for your podcast, and because then you can focus on the big picture stuff. It's sometimes boggles my mind when I'm on a podcast or I have podcast guests, and we do that one show and it's just years pass. And it's like, well, then what was really the point of that? Like, sure, we recorded something, got something posted, but you're supposed to be cultivating, developing relationships. And I think that that's something that it's just definitely a lost art. Because if you did this, then whenever you made a post on social media, you could have just kind of this core group of people who like and comment and reshare what you post, and vice versa. And sometimes we've been in this situation as entrepreneurs where we said, oh yeah, like who does SEO or who does Facebook ads? Maybe I can refer them over to Federico if like they're looking to be on a podcast or looking to grow a startup. So it's follow up with people, so that way you're on their radar, and that way they're on your radar. And it's just so few people do it. If you do that kind of thing, if you have a spreadsheet of your episodes, of your guests, and maybe even like the date that you last spoke to them, and you can look at that and be like, oh, it's been 6 months. Like I need to just go through the list and see who bites and see who's doing what. Follow up with your guests. Very few people do.
Yeah, I think this is a very good tip. I think it's really a golden nugget, Robert, because then often we think that, especially in B2B, right, the growth of our podcast is going to be given by some exotic marketing technique or by spending a lot of ads budgets on paid ads. But actually, what I'm hearing from you is that the growth of podcasts really starts from leveraging, first of all, the person that you hosted there, and also possibly their audience. So really making sure that you nudge them, that you help them to be active by reaching out, follow up, and I think that's very good to keep in mind. Well, Robert, it has been a very good conversation. I really want to thank you for your time. What's the best way for people to get in contact with you and know more about what you do?
You can go to my podcast, which is marketeroftheday.com, listen to those episodes. If the idea of a done for you podcast sounds great, or even if there's a conversation you want to have, you say, hey, I'm thinking about starting a podcast, but I don't know what to do. We can have this meeting and say, hey, my team can just pick it up and all you have to do is do the fun stuff. If you say, I've got a podcast, but I'm so overwhelmed, bogged down, doing it myself, I don't like my team, we can have that conversation as well. That's DFYpodcast.com. There's a button right in there to book my meeting with me. And then the real reason that we're here to sell some books, to plug that book, it's nextlevelselfbook.com. If you want to hear about some amazing stories from entrepreneurs, leaders, what they've overcome, how they figured out the focus problem, how they figured out how to attract clients, figured out leadership, productivity. That's nextlevelselfbook.com.
Amazing. Well, thanks a lot. I'll make sure all these links are also in the episode description. Thanks again for your time, Robert. Brilliant to have you here.
Happy to be here.
Cool.